This is iFanboy Pick of the Week 867, brought to you by Macroverse. Check out the new comic series Darkland on Webtoons and the Macroverse app. And iFanboy listeners just like you. My name is Connor Kilpatrick, and replacing Josh Flanagan forever on the show, starting this week, is Dr. Reinhaupt.
What? This is the first time hearing of it.
I feel, that's what the script says, and I feel like he would have texted me to say.
Did Josh hack you? Or
he didn't say he was quitting the show. I feel like after 18 years, he would have at least given me a text message.
You're right. That does seem like he should have let you know that was happening.
I'm going to have to call him after this. And hey, welcome to iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 867. You know, it's funny. All the original podcasts, the old school podcasts like ours, everyone always numbered their shows, and no one does now. And I just think sometimes we should just stop. But that's my own thing. We'll get to that another time. Every week, one of us picks the book they like the best from their stack of comics or shows, or whatever they have stacks of, and call it the Pick of the Week. It was a big week, Ryan, as you may have witnessed.
You could renumber. You don't have to stop numbering. You could just start at number one. Again.
Well, it's just like I listen to several podcasts, and none of them say what number of the show they are. They just it's the new episode. So sometimes I think about it. That's all.
I don't know. I think it's iFanboy Classic.
You have to just constantly be thinking, seeing what the other people are doing, and thinking whether or not that applies to your show. And it's just what you do. Anyway, where was I in the script? Oh yeah, we're going to talk about the best book of the week, the pick of the week. We're going to talk about the other books. We're going to talk about the patron pick. Hopefully, some listener mail if we have time. And here's your spoiler warning. Exercise some caution. This week, Ryan, you had the pick, and it was, as I said, it was a heavy week after a couple of light weeks in a row. And also, personally, I thought it was a pretty fun, entertaining week after a couple of sort of blah weeks in a row. So I had fun reading books.
I had a big stack, and as I started digging into my stack, I was like, man, this is a fun week of comics. There wasn't an obvious standout until I decided to sort of randomly read. I'll give a lot of credit to the Javier Rodriguez cover for Punisher War Journal Base #1, which has a cover featuring Frank Castle with the new Punisher Skull branding, but the Javier Rodriguez intensity of the facial expression and the tool wall behind him, I actually thought was really quite striking. And then I saw that it was Torunn Grønbekk writing it, who is the Norwegian writer who's been working on the Thor books, not unsurprisingly. And I haven't seen her name appear super often on non-Scandinavian mythology-based books so far, so I was curious. And this was drawn by Jabril Morissette-Fan with colors by Matt Milla and letters by Corey Pettit. I looked up how to pronounce the artist name. Apparently, it's Jabril. The Arabic version of Gabriel, which I think is interesting. Yep. But this book it truly came out of nowhere. It's clearly meant to be sort of a interstitial story in the current ongoing Punisher arc. And I think what I appreciate
also it's a one shot. It's not like Punisher number 17 or whatever it is. It's sort of off to the side.
It takes place before Punisher's family is killed.
Right.
And what I find interesting about that is I think there's been sort of I don't know if it's a retcon so much as a fleshing out of the backstory, where we see that, as much as Punisher idolizes and uses his dead family as an excuse for his crusade, his life wasn't perfect before they all died.
That's. I don't claim to have been around in the original days of the Punisher because I was in the 70s, but it's certainly a fairly modern, and by modern I could mean in the last 25 years, that the Punisher was always there. That was that Garth Ennis Punisher Vietnam miniseries that really sort of explored the idea that he was always the Punisher. It was just that the war plus his family dying really sort of broke the dam on it, but he was always in there. And it wasn't just the family getting murdered, but yeah, that's sort of a fairly modern idea.
And I thought it was, the premise behind this book is that Frank has been having a really hard time leaving the war behind. His wife kind of wants him to stop talking about it. She wants him to just say home is here in Jersey or wherever they live. Yeah. And he's having a tough time with that. He's having a hard time relating to his neighbors. He's having a hard time walking
He's
the dog.
Home on leave.
Yeah. And he finds that the mafia has, I guess not quite a safe house, but a torture house in his neighborhood. And he decides to deal with it directly after a Halloween party where he, his costume was inappropriate, and so his wife was mad at him for that. And he
could do no right in this issue, basically.
No, he really struggled. I mean, he didn't do great at therapy. He was asked to write a journal, but his journal was really sort of his true frustrations at what his familial expectations were and how he was unable to meet them in ways that he couldn't express to his own wife, which I think is part of the tragedy of the story of, like, I think Frank really does love Maria, but he just can't talk about it because his entire context for life is war and the Marines and pain and violence, and it's who he is, but he gets his wife enough to know that that's not what she wants to hear about all the time, but he also doesn't know how to talk about much else.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, he's fully not converted, but he's, like I said, he's on leave. It's not like he's even done with the war. He's got to go back, so he can't, like, turn it off. So he's not present. He's not present in their lives.
And it ends with the family dog getting shot by the mobster as Frank runs away from the situation. And obviously I'm a dog person, so that hit me hard as a final sort of moment in this issue where there's a lot of death and pain and destruction, but they killed the dog, and that made me sad, but it also made me feel something. And so in a full week of books where I was having a hard time figuring out what the pick would be, I think this book spoke to me in a way of just like family man doing his best with the tools that he has, but the tools that he has are mostly violence.
Did you relate to this comic this week?
More than I would like to admit, but yes.
It just hit me right this moment.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to read this originally. I had like 24 books, so I wasn't in a space to be taking on too many new books. But you made this a pick, so I figured I should read it. And it was very good. I think Torunn Grønbekk is terrific. I've really been enjoying what she's been doing on Thor lately, especially now she's basically solo on the book. And I thought the strength of this book was the writing. I thought the exploration of his psyche was really strong, and the action sequence was particularly brutal. And I had a couple of problems with the book, and it wasn't bad. I thought it was quite good, but the Jabril Morset fan art was good as art goes, but it wasn't. I thought he was super off model. Frank looked to be about 55 years old in this.
I noticed
in
that,
this
and
comic.
I got over it.
It just
personally,
didn't work for me. He looks like Frank's dad, not a guy who's supposed to be, in his 20s and fighting in the war. And I guess this is partially the writing. The criminals next door didn't make any sense. Like at first they were Russian and then they were Italian. Like when he first meets them outside, they're all Russians, and then inside they're all Italians. And then the other thing I had, the cover. I hate the logo, and the fact that they have the logo on the young Frank is offensive to me. But other than that, I thought, like I said, I enjoyed it. I was surprised. I thought this is really good. I wonder why they did it. The title I don't really get. Punisher War Journal base, but I mean it's his home base, I guess. I don't know, but. Or this is the start of his war journal. I didn't understand the title, but other than that, I like
I think obviously Punisher War Journal is an old idea of him keeping track of his vigilante crusade, but I don't know that I'd ever seen a moment in the Frank Castle story where a therapist asked him to start keeping a journal, and the journal he keeps is Frank Castle level darkness.
The exploration of this man who is emotionally estranged from his family and his life and consumed with thoughts of war and pain was really good. That was, like, to me, the strongest part of the book. I was really absorbed by it. So that was, again, a testament to the writing. But, and the art, I mean, again, other than Frank's extremely old face, the art was really good. I thought, storytelling was strong. It had a very lived in, the suburban neighborhood was filled out. The houses were.
Which I think I found impressive coming from a Norwegian writer, that like the American suburban experience felt well realized and captured in the script and execution of the story.
Yeah, so I mean, I thought all the elements were there. A couple of things aside that were a little bit, that tripped me up a little bit. Other than that, I thought it was good. It was very good. I like a Punisher story now and then, and this was strong. So there you go. I was surprised, and I'm not always surprised when these things happen. So good for you, Ryan.
I was
You
working
caught
through
me
my
off guard.
books, and the books, there were a lot of like obvious contenders for what I was thinking might be pick of the week, and I read through all of them and was not just none of them quite hit the sweet spot. And then late in my stack, I read this book and was like, man, this book caught me off guard and was really compelling. And so,
none of them spoke to you as a stressed out modern dad.
No, it just the darkness of this really got to me.
If it had been me, if it had been me, there was lots of contenders. It might have been Superman Space Age Book 3, of which the first two I think were also picks of the week. This is the final issue of this.
This was really, really good. It was long. After a long week, it was a long book, and I didn't know it was the final book in the series. I think if I'd known that going into it, it might have hit different. But I was by the time I read I read this pretty late in my stack, and by the time I read this, I was struggling to get through my books. So.
Yeah, the final issue of this Mark Russell, Mike and Laura Allred Black Label Superman out of continuity story that puts Superman sort of in the real timeline has just been terrific all the way through. And starting with it opens up in 1982, and Pariah is there with his 80s rolled up green blazer at the bar with Clark, and I just knew we were in for it. What I really liked about this was that it posits the crisis is coming, but in real time. So, in real time, crisis hits comics in 1985, 86. And so he has Anti-Monitor coming to Earth in that, real year. So I liked that bit of sort of meta storytelling, but this is much more involving of the Justice League and Lex Luthor. I love the Lex Luthor bits in here where, he's in prison because of the events of the previous issues, and he just doesn't need to be there anymore. So he leaves. And, it was great stuff with Pa Kent, and, the stuff with the League was great. And seeing Mike already getting to draw all these characters, like it's a big sort of satellite era League. And I still don't understand why everybody gets to wear their comics appropriate costume except for Batman. I don't understand why he's the only one that gets to redesign.
That is an interesting, yeah. And I did have a lot of fun on the big splash pages where there are a ton of characters. I did pause and just go through to make sure, did my nerd cred hold up in that? Can I identify every single one of these? And I could, even the Doom Patrol ones. That was, yeah. I
enjoyed Lex Luthor's his defense in court, that got him out of jail, blaming the nuclear blast on government incompetence, and case dismissed. This was one of the best things Mark Russell's written in a while, and I think I'm a big fan. I think you are as well of Mike Allred. So I just thought this was great.
I think I'm a bigger fan of Mark Russell at the moment, but yes, I do love Mike Allred and Laura Allred's art when they're working together as well.
And this was just great. And there was an interesting little thing here with the Joker and Batman that was good. And
does Mark Russell hate the Flash?
I don't know, but I liked the Flash is constantly building models.
He's building things in a way where everybody's like, fuck this guy.
He's in order to concentrate, he's building ships and bottles, and he's building Eiffel Tower models, and I just thought it was fun. This was great. And there was a really great bit at the end with Wonder Woman and what Superman is going to leave. I just thought this was a really surprising, out of nowhere, fun Elseworld Superman story that deals a little bit with the multiverse, and I thought it was great.
I liked the multiverse stuff in this a lot because it's done in a very kind of subtle way. It never, it doesn't beat you over the head with the fact that this is a different Superman who's had different experiences. It will still give you the different, Earth, universe, whatever. But really, the main difference is just it's the Superman with the black background behind the S rather than the yellow. And other than that, the characters are roughly equivalent. It's just the experiences they've had are significantly different. And I think that was interesting.
Yeah. This was really good. If you're listening here and you missed out in this series and you like Superman, you like Mike Allred, you like Mark Russell, you even like sort of classic, sort of Silver Agey DC, I think this is a must read. This was terrific. Really terrific.
I didn't realize it was only going to be 3 issues, as I mentioned. But I think
it's 3, but each issue is 3 times the size.
Long issues.
So it's probably like eight issues worth of comics. It's long. It's going to be a regular size trade when it comes out.
Spoilers again, but the Superman that's from the world that is most closely familiar to us as DC readers is the one who fails in the end, but is able to send quantum DNA of everyone on Earth to a different universe where the other Superman is able to resurrect them. But I mean,
a little Krakoa situation going on over there.
Well, but I gotta say, like the scenes where the Superman from more or less our world, he succeeds in getting the DNA out of our universe into the other universe, but then he just like goes back and holds his family while they die, and like that. Oh, again, you want to talk about like new dad feels? Whew, yeah, that hurt.
I also like the little comedic button where the Superman in the other universe puts up a statue of Superman from the other universe, our universe. But no one else knows that, so they're all like, "So did you just put a statue of yourself up?" And he's like, "It's not me."
Yeah, and you can't tell because the statue is just like bronze, so there's no color to the different S. But I also like that the statue says "in memory of a friend," and I think it's one of my favorite Superman tropes. When like somebody says, "Who are you?" and he goes, "A friend."
Right.
And it's hokey, it's dumb, but I actually just really like it as a Superman trope.
So I also would have given heavy consideration to Superman #1 from Joshua Williamson, Jamal Campbell, Ariana Mar. This is the soft rebooting of Superman from the dawn of DC. And so we've got Jamal Campbell, who is terrific. The last thing he did was the Naomi book, both Naomi books. And Joshua Williamson, obviously, he was one of the top guys now at DC. And as a soft reboot, as sort of a resetting of the pieces on the board, as a fun setup for, the status quo going forward, I really liked this a lot. I thought this was terrific. I kept thinking about this after I'd read it and scenes from it. I think Jamal Campbell is a terrific talent. He does really interesting, dynamic work. His characters sort of seem modern, like they're living in the world. They wear clothes that feel appropriate. They're not just timeless characters.
Well, what's interesting is that like he's able to draw characters that, like you said, look modern. Look like they're wearing real clothes, but like Clark Kent still's dressed like a dork.
Yeah, he's a dork. That's what's great about it.
But I'm thinking that's impressive. Like it's because I feel like there are a lot. Maybe a lot's unfair, but there are plenty of comic artists, Brett Anderson, that draw people that I don't think they intend to look like dorks, but they look like dorks.
We'll get to Lex in a second, but Lois is the editor-in-chief because Perry's on sabbatical after sort of having a heart condition situation in the previous issue. And I like the dynamic of that. She was the star reporter. Now she's got to be the boss, which is difficult. I really like this scene, and this was really great acting, was where Josh Williamson has Clark constantly wearing headphones to sort of drown out with music so he can concentrate on his work, which I thought was an interesting choice. And then he goes up to the roof and Lois joins him up there, and they're talking and they start kissing, and then Jimmy interrupts them. And so now we're back to being a secret identity, so no one knows he's Superman again, which is the way it should be.
When did that happen?
It happened in the event that this is before, whatever it was, the Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths event.
Oh yeah, I haven't read that.
Yeah, so
I mean, because I caught that, but I also Superman or Clark rips his shirt and tie off while Jimmy is still there on the roof. He's just facing the other direction. So,
but you think he's moving so fast you can't see him.
I know, but I legitimately wasn't sure because I didn't read that other book. I legitimately wasn't sure, like, did Jimmy not know, or was he just not paying attention?
They should have hit that a little harder. What I want to finish about that scene, which is the acting I liked a lot, was that Clark's wearing a baseball cap at work. And so they start kissing. Lois takes his hat off and is holding it. Jimmy shows up. She puts it on her head in sort of embarrassment and has it on the rest of the scene. I thought it was a really nice bit of acting from the art team.
I mean, maybe it just speaks to sort of my old school Superman sensibilities, but Lois screaming "Great Caesar's Ghost," I actually did laugh. I was like, that's great. Like, she's taking on the editor-in-chief role, and she's taking on the idioms that the editor-in-chief of the Planet must use.
So then there's another great situation where Lex is in prison, right, but he is talking to and tormenting Superman from the inside. So because as Superman explains, or Clark explains to Lois, he's calibrated his hearing for a handful of voices. So he can always hear Lois, he can always hear Bruce, he can always hear his mom, and he can always hear Lex. So Lex is just constantly just talking to him, and he's sort of the narrator of the issue. I thought that was a great little bit, and especially with the reveal that he has given his company over to Superman. It's now Supercorp. There's a giant Superman logo on the top of the building, and Mercy gives him a tour, and he's like, I don't want any of this. This is stupid.
Would you want to be able to whisper to Superman all the time? If there was like a Superman in our world, would you want that option?
I mean, are we friends?
No, I've seen your head. I think you're Lex.
Oh shit! No, I don't. I mean, if he was my enemy, then yeah, I'd torment him. But and then there's a great little video they play for Superman showing him, what they're going to do.
It's very much like it's the Jurassic Park,
yes.
Orientation video, but it ends with, it's got like a cherubic Superman who's explaining everything, and then it ends with like a bunch of people in Superman, uniforms. Like there's those eras of the Justice League where the satellite or the Hall of Justice is fully staffed by people, and that's kind of what we're getting here. But they fully use the like Tim Daly Adventures of Superman model to like demonstrate what Superman is supposed to represent, which I thought was really. I liked. Yeah, I thought that was fun. I thought that was a cool twist. And Superman's like, no, I don't want, like you said, I don't want any of this. Shut it all down. And Mercy is like, well, if we shut it down, all these people are out of jobs. LexCorp employs, a quarter of the people who live in Metropolis. So,
so
if you shut it down, all these people are out of work.
The economy is destroyed and everything. So he has to keep it going. And then I really liked I just love when Lex twists the knife on Superman. That's one of the best things about the whole relationship. And here, he pops up as a hologram, sort of in Kryptonian garb, and says, I had myself programmed as a hologram because I know how much you love father figures teaching you. He literally
calls it my son.
Yeah, and then just the rage in Superman's eyes. Like, this was a terrific fucking comic. I really like this. This might have been my pick of the week, and the more I think about it. I'm excited, I'm excited for, a reset Superman, because it just wasn't really working ever since the reveal. And this was great.
I mean, it sounds dumb to say, but like, I'm just glad the Trunks are back.
I was fully in the get rid of the Trunks camp when they announced it, and I was wrong. It takes a big man to admit when he's wrong, and I was wrong about the Trunks. The Trunks
takes a big man to put those Trunks on.
Yeah, the Trunks need to be there, and not just from a emotional point of view. It's just graphically, you needed the red to break up all that blue. I just didn't.
And also, like, we've introduced, I think you guys talked about this in a recent show. There's like so many different versions of, we've got Superboy, like Connor, we've got Superman John, we've got the Superman of China, Kong, they have all like their costumes. They've done a decent job at diversifying them, but the thing they all seem to like want to do is get rid of the trunks. So it's like OG Superman has to have those trunks. That's the thing that distinguishes him, as silly as it is, but it just works. Yeah,
I saw that James Gunn put a tweet or something out saying trunks or no trunks, and so now I'm like, I need to be a consultant. I'll get in there. I'll fix everything.
Love that for you. Date corner.
Date corner. I did a couple of weeks.
I forgot to point out that Punisher and Superman Space Age were journal corner, because they're both about characters writing journals. Journal corner over. Date corner begins.
So last issue of Spider-Man, which we're going to talk about in a second, I mentioned how it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I was hoping it was going to be like a one-shot fun kind of date romp. And we're talking about Batman Superman World's Finest 12. This is what I was talking about, like the classic one issue, superheroes go on a date and it all goes wrong, or right, but in the wrong way kind of story. And this is it from Mark Waid, Emanuela Lupacchino, and team. And Emanuela Lupacchino is great. I really wished, I was really bummed it wasn't Dan Mora, because if any issue, this would have been great to have him on.
Agreed.
So this is the ill-fated date between Rob and Supergirl that was referenced in the very first issue of this book.
Can I ask you a real question?
Yes. No.
I mean, I assume we both more identify with Robin than Supergirl in this particular scenario, just because, we're hetero-gender rolled people, whatever. Do you wear your costume on the date? That's an insane choice.
Yeah. So now here's why this wasn't in the conversation for pick of the week in my head. I thought some of these things were really contrived for the reason why the date went badly. I was like, I found myself going, would this really happen? And I get what ended up falling on here is that there was no chemistry, which is totally fine. I've been on those dates, in my 20s, where you meet someone really attractive, and you go out and you're just like, oh, there's just nothing here, no spark. But
it's also super believable for these two characters at this point in their lives to not have romantic chemistry.
Oh no, I believe that part. What I don't believe is what you said. I don't believe Dick Grayson showing up to their date in his costume. I don't believe him being this not charming.
Obtuse,
you know what I mean?
About like, oh, I'll pay. Obviously, I don't like money's not an issue for me. Like that's not Dick Grayson that I know.
I just didn't buy this as like the reasons why it wouldn't work, which is a bummer because I was so excited. The first page where she's trying on all the outfits, and I was like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted. And her telling Clark like she was so surprised to be interested in him when she saw him in a team up, and I was like, yes, give it to me, Mark Waid. And then it just took a turn, and I was like, oh, the first thing was the costume, and then I was like, okay, that could be like a cute little misunderstanding because she shows up in an outfit and she just got to run and change, and she's bummed because she spent so much time picking it out. But then he's just kind of like, he's not an asshole, but he's just kind of like oblivious.
He's a doofus.
And Dick Grayson's not a doofus.
And I thought like they cut to the kitchen a lot, and the chef like wants to nail his orecchiette for Supergirl and Robin, and I thought that could have been funny, but it
didn't really go anywhere.
The only direction it went was they kept asking, "Where's our food?" And I've been on those dates. I've been on those dates with like my wife, the person I'm married to, and the food is taking too long, and we're both like, well, this date kind of now sucks. Like we both just want to get up and leave. And it's not that we don't like each other anymore, but it's like we're not having fun in this experience anymore because there's no, like, we had a nice appetizer and it's been a half hour and the food hasn't arrived. So I get it.
And then they, in the team up, because there's a whole accident outside involving a bowling ball truck and a monkey, and
which I thought was kind of funny.
The setup was all funny, but like they had no chemistry out in the field either, which I guess is a metaphor. But we've already seen that they have that chemistry in the field, so it was bizarre. I didn't dislike it, but I found myself with each passing page going, oh man, like this.
I know. I kind of like I went into this book really excited, and then as soon as I started reading it and realized kind of what they were doing with the premise, I was like, all right, I'm ready for this to be over.
Now,
much like they felt about their own date.
What's funny is, DC is a mess editorially, but like they have him here in the classic Robin outfit, which is not an outfit he's been wearing at all in the book. He's been wearing the modified version. Did the classic
version. Robin outfit ever have a high collar like this, though?
Nope. That's a Dan Mora thing that they put in for the new outfit, and it's okay, like if it's blowing in the breeze. But now he just looks like a guy with his polo shirt popped, and I was just like, this is. And
the only thing I noticed about it is the way his outfit is portrayed, and he spends the first part of the issue before Batman asks him how the date went, designing his original Nightwing costume. Or George Perez, I guess I should say, not Mark Wolfman. But they do cut to a scene where it's him and Supergirl fighting against Man-Bat people with Black Lightning. And I was like, oh, there is a visual similarity between Black Lightning's costume and Nightwing's original costume. So I thought that the DV
and the color scheme.
Right. And so I thought that was a little interesting that, like, even though, he and Supergirl didn't work out and didn't hit it off, like this team up that they had early on with another person involved did somewhat inspire Dick's choices in his ensemble moving forward in life. But, that's a very minor little thing.
Yeah. My final note on the date is that, it's first reference in issue 1 and they're icy towards each other, right? Like
sure.
They have that, that dialogue balloon that portrays iciness in the wording, and nothing on the date I thought warranted that. It was more like really disappointing.
There was no major like falling out.
Right. It was more disappointing / embarrassing. And so no reason why they should have been icy toward each other as opposed to just like, oh, hey,
That's a good point.
It was both went too far, but not far enough. It was I understand this was a hard thing for Mark Waid to hit the bullseye on, but I don't think he did, which is unfortunate because I was really, really excited for this.
I was really looking forward to this too, and in fact,
I saved it for the very last comic I read as my most anticipated comic, and it was not what I was hoping for. Now let's talk about the other date, the conclusion to the Amazing Spider-Man 914, the Peter Parker Black Cat 2-part date in which they end up
Is this a date where we have Dotson?
At a resort.
We got Dotson.
With the Dotsons, written by Joe Kelly, and at a resort with Mary Jane and her boyfriend and a bunch of tech bros.
Husband, I think. Are
they married?
I think so.
I don't know. A bunch of tech bros who have leased the equipment from the Secret Six from the Rabbit character. That's her business. Is she lets you rent the equipment and pretend, it's almost like paintball. And it's all gone awry. Anyway, this was fun. I liked this. I liked this issue more than the first issue. I liked that there was a moment where you think the Black Cat's like, never mind, but then she's like, nope, I still like Peter. And Peter's like, hey, listen, I'm always going to love Mary Jane, but I don't love her with a capital L anymore. And she's like, lay it on me, So I thought this was good.
I felt like they were going for a level of emotional maturity that we don't often get from Peter Parker with that conversation.
Yeah.
It still felt like a conversation that was more for the comic fans than like what two actual people would talk about.
Sure.
Like I personally can't imagine being in a romantic relationship with somebody and telling them, oh, I still love my ex, I just can't be with them, so like I'm gonna date you for now.
Well,
like,
I still love them, but I'm not in love with them. That's a conversation that people can have, I think.
Maybe I just it didn't quite hit the mark for me personally.
Yes, I get that. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's wrong or did anything irredeemable. I'm just saying I bumped on it a little bit, but it didn't, it works in the sense that Felicia Hardy is such a self-assured character that I could see her being okay with that conversation. I've never dated anyone like that where I felt like I could have that conversation with them and have it go okay that we're still dating by the end of the conversation.
Yeah, it's funny, when it looked like it was going to go sideways on them as a couple, I was like, oh man, what's this going to do for the Black Cat Mary Jane miniseries, which is basically the entire crux of it is that, Black Cat feels guilty for being in love with Mary Jane's ex and they're friends. Like, I thought I was going to blow that up before it ended, but it didn't go that way. And I'm happy it didn't go that way. I'm happy they get to explore this pairing for a while because it's fun. And Black Cat's, feel it in a resurgence right now. So I'm excited.
And I mean, Joe Kelly is clearly, I think, working through some stuff from living in California for a while. That comes across in how annoying this version of the Sinister Six are.
I thought it was fun. I mean, I thought it was a fun issue. It wasn't exactly like if you took the format of the Batman Superman World's Finest issue 12 and you put these characters into it. That's more of what I was looking for, but this was fine. I enjoyed this very much. And also, they could double date. Maybe they could work out everybody's issues with Robin, Supergirl, Spider-Man, and Black Cat.
Oh, double date across universes. Yeah. I thought you meant double date with Peter and Felicia and Mary Jane.
Oh, you know that's coming. You know it's coming.
I got a whitewater rafting story that
Felicia
I'll save for off air.
Felicia and Mary Jane are like buddies now. It's definitely coming.
Multiple exes, one raft. Not a great scenario.
I have multiple exes, same table at a wedding.
Can you die at a wedding if you fall off the table?
One of your exes could stab you. That could happen.
I mean, what if it gets to a point where you just say, maybe I'll throw myself off the raft on purpose?
Well, there was a point where I was dancing and suddenly hands grabbed both of my hands. I looked up and I had an X on each hand, and I was like, uh-oh.
I mean, I had that because they were pulling me back into the boat because I did throw myself off the raft.
My story does not end the way I was, the good way. Anyway.
I mean, I had to tip one of the exes because they did pull me back in the boat. But this episode, not brought to you by any of mine or Connor's ex-girlfriends, it is in fact brought to you by Macroverse. Macroverse is proud to share their new comic book series in wide release Darkland. Darkland is a delightfully twisted black comedy centered around the shifting alliances between the power players in hell, AG double hockey sticks itself, and the plans they have for Earth. A little bit of Game of Thrones mixed with Veep. It's twisted, funny, and provocative. Created and written by Evan Shapiro with art by Frank Calico. Darkland is a digital comic with full episodes released bi-weekly on the Macroverse in their proprietary Tap Story format. But it's also released weekly in shorter episodes on Webtoons in their Perpetual Scroll version. The full series of Darkland will have a digital collectible release in elegant landscape format for iPad and web coming late March 2023, followed by the trade paperback and collector's edition coming later this year. And here's your chance to get involved. After the digital release in March, Macroverse will be working with fans to generate ideas for an anthology series set within the world of Darkland, which will be voted on by the community as to which will get greenlit into production as a separate release, similar to what Macroverse did with their previous series, Dead Town, and their upcoming series called Bushidos. There's lots of cool stuff coming from Macroverse, so get on board now. Head on over to their website at macroverse.world/Darkland for more info, or go to Webtoons and search for Darkland.
We've talked a bit about these One More Day books, from these Batman One More Day books, which were originally billed as like the ultimate story for each character, sort of the One Bad Day, which is a reference obviously to Grey's Anatomy. I'm not Grey's. You know what just happened? I literally got an email. You know, when I get an email, I get a pop up on my screen, and it was an email about Grey's Anatomy, and so I'm literally saying the words that popped up on the screen like I'm Ron Burgundy.
And this is Batman's first encounter with McSteamy, or is it McDreamy?
Yeah.
I can't keep straight.
Like, you know, it's supposed to be reference to Killing Joke because it's the one bad day thing. So anyway, this and so there's been a bunch of them. Like 2 were really good, a couple have been okay, most have been forgettable. I really like this Clayface one, Batman One Bad Day, Clayface #1 from Colin Kelly, Jackson Lansing, Harmonico.
This was really good.
I really like this. This is probably, I put this up with Riddler and Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze being a pick of the week selection. This is about Clayface's adventures in Hollywood, trying to get cast in the Killing Joke movie, playing the Joker.
How does any Hollywood screenwriter know that story?
I don't know. But
all right, moving on. Never mind.
It just goes really badly for him. He goes out to L.A. He's a waiter at the Chateau Marmont, even though it's not called that. And he
called like the Chateau Sunset or something.
Yeah, like it's on Sunset in LA, but it just goes badly.
I didn't write it, Connor.
The audition, and then he almost gets the part. His coworker gets the part, so then he has to kill the coworker. And
his coworker, who is a comedian.
He was a comedian, not an actor. And he's got to kill him and pretend to be him on the set so he can act in it. And then he has to kill the director. Then he has to kill the producer. Then he has to kill the studio executive. It just goes really down the tubes for him. And I thought it was really well written. I
also love that the name of the issue was No Notes.
And Harmonico was a terrific, great choice for the comic. Had some really like crazy Clayface stuff he had to draw. Colors by Romulo Ferrato Jr. I thought this was a terrific little package. If you're someone who has been sporadic on these One Bad Day books, this is definitely one to check out. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. The only slight note I have in this is that
nope, sorry, Connor, no notes.
I know is that Bruce Wayne, when he shows up, was a little bit old written. Like he's calling the guy like kid and like son, a little bit old written. But other than that,
sorry, no notes.
It was good. I like this a lot.
Yes, this was very good. I'm glad this was not on my stack until you mentioned it as something you wanted to include in the script, and I read it to the point where I was a few minutes late to our recording session, and I'm glad I did, so thank you.
Yeah, it was real strong.
Blue Book by James Tynion IV, art by Michael Avon Oeming, who I feel like we've been seeing more recently lately, and that is just a treat as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. This is I guess James Tynion IV now has his own imprint from Dark Horse called Tiny Onion.
Yeah, that was the name of his Substack. And then when Substack went sideways and everybody, and as we knew it would, most of them moved up. A lot of them moved up to Dark Horse, but so he just basically took his own label and it's now a label at Dark Horse as opposed to Substack.
Good for him.
Yep.
Great. I mean, so his most recent miniseries, The Closet, which also kind of had... So Project Blue Book refers to the Air Force's investigation of the UFO phenomenon back in the 60s. And essentially, the reason they were so interested in it is because there's this country that used to exist called the USSR, the Soviet Union, and they were a bit of a problem. And so if there were things flying around the skies that couldn't be identified, there was a reason to maybe investigate it. It didn't mean they thought there were aliens. It meant they thought the Soviets had technology they didn't have access to or couldn't track. So that's where the name Blue Book comes from. This particular story is it's a sort of a fictionalized, in quotes, retelling of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction from 1961, considered by many to be the first UFO abduction story in American pop culture. I'm a person of a more skeptical nature, so I sort of believe that this is more of a cultural phenomenon than an actual event that occurred. But it's an interesting story because it's a interracial couple in the early 60s in New England who are on vacation. They were driving, on their vacation, and I think they were getting a little. They were running short on funds because the vacation lasted a little longer than they thought it would, and they were just trying to get home by driving through the night. And I think they were tired, they were nervous as an interracial couple in the early 60s, and they essentially saw lights in the skies and felt like they had some lost time in their drive that later they recounted through dreams and hypnosis and other sort of alternate modalities as a sort of alien abduction event, and this is kind of recounting that in comic book form.
Who hasn't driven across the country and felt like they've lost time?
Right? I mean, that is one of the explanations. This was New Hampshire, so it's a shame Josh isn't here to defend his homeland. But looking at like the real elements of the story, Barney the husband in the story, never quite, I don't think, bought into what like had purportedly happened, but under hypnotic regression, like clearly was experiencing some sort of trauma. And so you can actually go and this, again, these are real people this happened to, and you can go see videos or audio recordings of Barney under hypnosis recounting what happened. And like, he's clearly a person who's like dealing with some shit, and it's creepy. It's really creepy. But Betty was the one who was having dreams and sort of seemed to really construct the narrative of this event in her mind after the fact, which happens to all of us. Like, none of us are immune from reconstructing events in our memory. Every time you remember something, you remember it a little differently, and that becomes your reality. Like, I'm not criticizing her. I'm just saying I think, she already kind of believed in the UFO phenomenon before this happened, and I think this gave her an opportunity to essentially have a career as a UFO celebrity. And so I think she took advantage of that. And it's not to say that it's not a creepy and interesting story. I don't think most of it's real, but I'll be curious to see. I will keep with this book just because I'll be curious to see what James Tynion IV does with this story that is purportedly historical, but I think has a lot of fabrications and fantastical elements along the way.
DCeased, War of the Undead Gods, issue 6 of 8. And I've been trying to figure out why I haven't been as into this particular DCeased mini as I have the others.
It's really not working for me, and I
wonder if it's because it's on a cosmic scale and it feels less character driven. Like, one of the strengths of the other miniseries have been it's so, even though it's about a giant zombie outbreak, it's still been very small scale and character driven. This feels like it's maybe on a too big of a scale, but
I like the end of this issue.
I did really like this issue. It might have been one of my favorites of this minis series, although when Highfather clocks Damien and the sound effect is crunch. He doesn't really feel like anything crunched. We see him again. He just kind of like got some blood in his lip and eye, but like, he feel like his jaw should have been broken or something, mangled or something?
Yeah, I mean, the caption is the sound of the god's fist on his face was sickening.
Right. So he should have his face be crumpled. That could just be my wishful thinking. But what I did really like about as you said, the ending was that Alfred can't take it anymore after losing the Waynes and then having to kill Bruce and Dick and Tim in the beginning of the story.
Jim Corrigan gets ripped out of the Spectre by Mr. Mxyzptlk.
Yeah. So he screams with such...
is now unmoored from a host.
Such cosmic anguish he screams at Damien getting crunched by Highfather that he summons the spirit of the Spectre, and now Alfred is the Spectre. And I was like, well, damn. That's the cliffhanger.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that cliffhanger quite a bit. So
yeah,
I'm still excited to read the book. You're just not doing it for me like the other ones were.
Agreed. It's a bummer. You know what is doing it for me though?
Son of a bitch.
Go Power Corner. This time there are turtles. Go Power Corner.
So
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. This is the second volume of this series. Number 3.
Is this right? Is this Dan Mora?
Yeah. This is Ryan Parrott, Dan Mora, colored by Raul Angulo, and
First of all,
lettered by Ed Dukeshire.
That guy has got some sort of Kirby-esque stamina, number 1.
True.
Number 2, he's drawn this instead of the Robin Supergirl date issue.
Yeah, man, because you know why? At the end of last issue, the character we'd been missing this entire time, Orokusaki himself, that's right, the Shredder, appears and starts kicking butt. But guess what? He's on the side of the Power Rangers and the Turtles. He's fighting against Krang and Rita Repulsa. And so I think none of us saw that coming. What's really interesting about this book is that Casey Jones, that character we all love from the original Turtles series, he's now Ranger X because Krang gave him the last working morpher from Dimension X, where Krang is from, because Dimension X had its own Power Rangers and their own connection to the morphing grid, and Krang obviously killed all of them because they would have stopped him had they've been allowed to continue their Ranger activities. But the last morpher that worked was given to Casey Jones. And now Casey Jones has Ranger powers. And what's crazy is that Krang and his minions have disconnected the other Rangers from the morphing grid. And so the only recourse they have is to figure out how to use their morphing coins. The coins still work. The coins are fine.
Of course they do.
It's the connection to the grid.
It's always the connection to the grid.
That is the problem. So Donnie and Billy figure out how to use the mutagen that turned the turtles into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They figure out how to use the morphing coins to help the Rangers morph into mutated versions themselves. So now, like, Jason is like a T-Rex man, and Kim is like a pterodactyl woman, and Jason's like a mastodon man, and Billy's a Triceratops dude. And
did they choose to become horrible? They did to God instead of people.
Yes, because they said because when they lost their connection to the morphing grid. This is the thing I forgot to tell you, Connor, and this is really important. Is when they lost their connection to the morphing grid, the Turtles also lost their connection to the Shadow Morphers, which allowed them to also act as Rangers, getting the powers.
What the fuck is a Shadow Morpher?
A Shadow Morpher is what allows the Turtles to clone the morphing powers of these teens with attitude. I call it Ratitude. Okay, because they're rad teens.
I regret that question. Well, that sounded fun.
They got to flip it so that the teens with Ratitude are mutating into morpher versions of themselves using their power coins, which gives them the power to fight against the Rock Soldiers and Bebop and Rocksteady and all the other baddies. And it ends with, as you probably would have guessed, Shredder and the Turtles are going to go into Dimension X, and they're going to put a stop to Krang and his whole operation if they can all figure out a way to work together.
So I took the opportunity to text Josh and ask him to reconsider quitting. And so we all wait for his answer. So there you go. Those are the books we wanted to talk about.
Teens with Ratitude.
At patreon.com/iFanboy, every patron can vote to add a book to the rundown. This week, the patron pick was Local Man #1 from Image Comics. Written by Tim Seeley with art by Tony Fleeks and Tim Seeley. And colors by Brad Simpson and Felipe Sobriero. And this was super fun.
I really like this. Yeah, I like this a lot.
Local Man is a tribute to the early 90s, the original, not the original, but that sort of second wave of Image Comics, in which there's an extreme team. And I don't think this is from the old days. I think this is a new team. I'm not 100% sure. I couldn't find anything written about it anywhere that told me if this was a brand new team or this is something they pulled out of the archives. There's a short
Tim Seeley essay in the background where he talks about getting Youngblood #1. But
this is not Youngblood. Yeah, it's not
Youngblood. It's an early Image pastiche, sort of a Gen 13 Wildstorm vibe.
And that's, I think, part of why it's so successful is that it could very well have been written in 1994. So this is the story of one of those characters who comes home after something bad has happened. He's back in his hometown. No one likes him. His superhero name is Crossjack. No one's happy that he's there. He's
actually like the Captain America type for the team that he was on.
Kind of. Well, he has a shield, but it's not really like a... Well, I guess so. you know, has to stay with his family, and he's having flashbacks to
his family are like the anti-Kents.
Yeah,
and I think purposefully so. Like, I think, you know, the way if Clark came home even after something bad had happened, the way that they would support him is the exact opposite of the way this family doesn't support him.
Yeah, the only person happy to see
we're gonna have dinner this late.
The only person happy to see him is his ex-girlfriend Inga, who's married to somebody else, but she has a soft spot for him. And then, you know, it turns out that in his hometown, when he has a nemesis called Hodag, who is sort of like what the fuck is he? He's some sort of a warthog or something.
In Hodag, a Hodag in American folklore is a fearsome critter resembling a large bull-horned carnivore with a row of thick curved spines down its back.
That's what he is. And so they have a fight, and you know, thing doesn't go well, and there's a cliffhanger. And then the second half was terrific, which is Tim Seeley written and drawn classic tale. So it looks like it could have come out in 1994 of this team, and so you get to see them in action. You get some backstory that is important to the main story, because it seems as if one of the reasons why people hate him is he seems maybe he had an affair with the woman on the team who was, you know, with the main guy. So like the sort of the A-list couple of the team. He's just, maybe he broke them up. Something happened like that. But I thought this was great. I really did. I was gonna give it a shot anyway. I like Tim Seeley. It seemed like a fun concept. The cover was really striking. And then when I finished it, I thought, man, that was great. I really liked that.
Yeah, and one thing I really liked about this was when they switched art styles, you know, when Tim Seeley took over and did it in like the early Image style. I thought that actually was really successful. Like it didn't break the story, but it did make it feel like, oh, this is like the moment where it's super throwbacky, and the character, you know, you can tell that's the same character, but like he's a little schlubby in the modern world, and he's like super heroic and chiseled in the 90s world. But I thought that the juxtaposition actually worked nicely to tell the story, and the final page kind of presents a interesting gross mystery. So I'll be curious to see where this goes.
Even, I mean, as you said, the flashbacks within the main story, which are drawn like a very realistic, you know, Vertigo-esque comic, the flashbacks have that early 90s look to them, even though it's the other artist. And then the Tim Seeley stuff is really early 90s. I thought this was a really fun concept. I like that we're playing with this, you know, looking back at this era of comics, which, you know, not a great era of comics, but fun to look back on and, you know, sort of comment on them. And
we got two questions to answer right now, Connor.
What's that?
One question is how you rate it, and the other question is, are you sticking with it?
I'm giving this a 4 stars.
Wow.
4 stars. Yeah, 4 out of 5.
I think I would probably. Oh man, 4's a really good rating. I might go 3.75.
Okay,
I'm close, but I'm gonna keep reading this. I truly am, but yeah,
I'm gonna stick with it too. I was pretty happy when I put it down, and I enjoyed it. So, patreon.com/iFanboy. Every patron who votes to add a book to the rundown. Every patron who votes, we thank you. And if you give it the $5 or higher level, you get a superpower live on the show given to you. It's called the Patron Power, and we do it now.
And this episode, Jeff Reid is getting a patron power, and I don't know if it was inspired by Blue Book or Betty and Barney Hill, but Jeff Reid has the power to summon unidentified craft to abduct anyone at any time.
Well, first of all, we should point out Jeff Reid was our former colleague.
Yeah, no, Jeff's great.
Jeff, people don't know Jeff. He was one of our columnists at iFanboy. He did great.
I tried to see if a library-based power would be summoned for Jeff, and it just wasn't happening. And I think the power that exists is that a interdimensional alien or otherwise unknown craft.
I think it's a great power.
Abduct people. If there's a particularly obnoxious patron at the library,
where do they go?
They're just abducted.
They're just gone? He just disappears people?
They might reappear in the woods like a week later. I think that's partly up to Jeff. But,
so he's not indiscriminately murdering people.
They're not murdered. They're just abducted. It's he has some control of what happened. You know, I don't even think it's like the same craft every time. I just think it's a craft appears as needed to abduct those that annoy or otherwise vex Jeff.
Sure, I have no problem with that. I'm just saying if you abduct someone and they're never seen again, it's basically a murder. So I was just making sure that they were actually returned at some point.
Listen, if Jeff's having a particularly tough week, there's nothing to say he couldn't abduct himself. Couldn't say, I need a break.
Wow. That's not a situation you want to get into, is when you feel like you have to start abducting yourself.
Self-abduction.
Yeah.
Well,
so there you go, Jeff. Thanks for writing in. Thanks for being a patron. We appreciate it. Patreon.com/iFanboy is where you can get your Superpower Live in the show if you give the $5 higher level. And now let's do an email. It's a somewhat long question, but I want to read it because it's interesting. Reese G from New York City, parentheses Staten Island, but that's embarrassing to say, and it should be. It should be.
Is it? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know enough about the whole situation that's happening there.
It's embarrassing. Reese says, first time emailer here. I've been thinking about this question since April 14th, 2014. My question is, how do you think DC Comics should handle Robins and Batman sidekicks in general? I'd say there's an oversaturation of Batman sidekicks, not because I don't like them, but because the comics don't really get a chance to focus on all of them. When it comes to Robin specifically, I see a few options. Batman can get a new Robin and stick with that one forever, or take one of the former Robins and stick with them, or rotate the existing Robins as his sidekick, or stop taking in Robins since we have so many and remain solo. Which of these would you choose, or is there a different path you'd take? And now he said in his email, you can stop there. I have some thoughts that are just for context. I'm going to read his thoughts just because I think they're interesting. It says, he says, it seems like Robins don't really reach the peak of their popularity, the best version of themselves, while in the Robin role. Dick as Nightwing, Jason as Red Hood, Stephanie as Spoiler, all seem more iconic than they were as Robins. It seems like Tim Drake really made a name for himself in his Red Robin solo series, correct me if I'm wrong, and Damian is much better as a character in and after his most recent Matthew Rosenberg series. For this reason, I think it's better for Robins to eventually leave the nest, but I don't like the idea of no more Robins, but I see the problems in an endless stream of sidekicks. My current solution would be to bring in Duke Thomas as the main sidekick. He hasn't really been fleshed out as a character yet, in my opinion, but I really like Duke because I relate to him as a young African-American, and being the only sidekick of that background, unless you count Batwing as a sidekick, I wish he had a bigger presence in the family. So there's a lot here.
It's a great question. And you're right, there's a ton to unpack.
Number one, just some housekeeping. I think Batwing isn't a sidekick, but he's a member of the family. So there's a difference between sidekick and Batman family members. Like Huntress is a member of the Batman family. She's not a sidekick.
Batwoman was never a sidekick.
Batwoman's not a sidekick, but she's a member of the extended family.
So there's Bat family.
Yeah, there's different levels of sidekick here. What do you want to tackle first? Because I think there's two things here. There's the first question, which is what should be done with the Robins, and there's the second question of the second idea of the characters being more iconic outside of the red costume. So which one do you want to tackle first?
Let's do the second one first. Do you agree with the stated premise that Robins are more successful after they quote unquote leave the nest?
No. Well, yes and no. It just depends on the character.
I agree.
There's 5 official Robins. Okay, you had Dick, Jason.
Dick, Jason, Tim, Stephanie, and Damian.
Correct.
Thank you.
Duke was sort of a Robin in that We Are Robin's book, but it was sort of never really referred to again, and he's not official.
But he also like refused to take on the name. Like he was Duke, and then he eventually became, like he said, I'm never having a code name until they decided to call him Signal.
Right.
Which
Duke has been a mess, and I understand and appreciate why Reese relates to Duke the most, obviously, but they haven't, in my opinion, they haven't done anything to earn Reese's approval. Do you know what I mean? Like they haven't.
I think Reese would agree with that. I think Reese
Reese agrees with it. I'm just saying,
for a situation where Duke is more fleshed out.
They haven't done anything
fully
with it.
realized.
So let's get back to the idea that the Robins are more iconic outside of the Robin costume. So Dick was Nightwing, Jason's Red Hood, Stephanie is Spoiler, and Tim is Red Robin. Red Robin was not
never worked.
Never worked. It was 26 issues for 2 years. He's not even the most iconic Red Robin. I'd say the most iconic Red Robin was Dick in Kingdom Come.
Exactly, and that was actually the point I was going to make. Is if my memory serves, which I think you've just confirmed, the origin of Red Robin as a post-Robin identity is Dick Grayson in Kingdom Come, which always struck me as strange. Of like, why isn't this character Nightwing? What does Red Robin mean in the context of not just being Robin anymore? And then for Tim Drake to assume that mantle, like I actually think Tim Drake is the character that breaks the mold here, where he is the most iconic as a Robin because of all the Robins, he's the one who self-selected and said, the Batman that I'm seeing operating in Gotham right now is failing because he doesn't have a Robin, and I'm smart enough to figure out how to be the Robin that he needs. And I think that's actually a really powerful version of a character deciding to become a Robin rather than letting the trauma inform their non-decision to get swept up in Batman's crusade.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I could talk about why he was Red Robin in the Kingdom Come, but that's beside the point. We don't think we have time for that. So Jason Todd obviously is more iconic as Red Hood than Robin, although his death is like one of the iconic, comic book deaths as Robin. Stephanie was, spoiler, she was Robin. She was Batgirl. Of those, the least iconic was Robin. She was only Robin very briefly, a year, like less than a year. Damian has only been Robin, so he's only Robin. Now, here's where I think you're going to disagree, and some people will disagree. Dick Grayson. I think for two groups of people, he is more iconic as Robin. Number one, comic readers my age and older. And number two, the general public. The general public, if they know who Dick Grayson is at all, they know him as Robin. They don't know Nightwing. They don't know who Nightwing is. They have no context for Nightwing unless they watch the cartoon. And
what part of this are you thinking I might disagree with you on?
Well, just that he's a lot more iconic as Robin than Nightwing. But, in almost every media, you're talking about Batman 66, you're talking about Young Justice and the first season of the Titans. Like, in every media, almost, he is sort of more known as Robin than he is as Nightwing, because people just don't know who Nightwing is outside of comic fans, really.
Yeah, I think I think on the surface I agree with you in that he is the most well known of any of the Robins, but I also think of any of the Robins, like, people don't know, in terms of like obscure character transitions. Nobody knows about Stephanie transitioning to Spoiler. Nobody knows about Jason transitioning to Red Hood. Sure. But like the idea of Dick Grayson outgrowing the Robin role and transitioning to something else, transitioning to Nightwing, even if people don't know the particulars of that story, I think there is something about there's something about Dick's story of outgrowing the mantle that is distinct from the other Robin.
Oh, for sure.
Stories that exist.
Two of them died. Jason died. Stephanie, quote unquote, died. It turned out later it was a fake death, but that's how she stopped being Robin. And Tim is still Robin, so is Damian. So the only one who really chose to say I'm not doing this anymore was Dick. Question for you, and also just to put a pin in that, I grew up reading comics in the early '80s, mostly reading Bronze Age stuff. Robin, Dick was my Robin. People who are older than me, Dick was their Robin. So I think the case can be made, and a lot of people will say, for comic readers, he's more iconic than Nightwing, and I will agree with that. I'm saying, in a general sense, he's probably more iconic as Robin. Now, what do you think? Which role was Dick in longer, Robin or Nightwing? That's a question for you. I know the answer.
Well, wasn't Dick introduced in like the 30s or 40s?
So how many more years? Which one do you think? Just pick one.
I would guess we're approaching.
It's close.
I was actually going to say I would guess we're approaching equilibrium, where he's been both for about 40 years, but I would still give the edge to Robin.
You're correct. So he was Robin from 1940 to 1984, so that's 44 years as Robin, and then Nightwing from 84 to the present. Although in the middle over there was 3 years in two different chunks where he was Batman. So he was Nightwing for 39 years, although 36 if you take away the 3 years where he wasn't Nightwing and he was Batman.
And I think that's fair to take that away. For me, as a slightly younger reader than you, I remember when I started reading. So I watched the Batman animated series before I was like a serious comic reader, and in that series, you sort of go through the same arc of Dick outgrowing the Robin persona and becoming Nightwing, and then they transition like the animation style and all that stuff, but it was still the same continuity. And in that continuity, they jump straight over Jason and go straight from Dick to Tim, but they put a lot of Jason in Tim, which is weird.
Yeah.
So that was always, once I realized kind of what they'd done, I had like mixed feelings about Tim, and I think I'm more fully invested in the true comics version of Tim now. But when I actually started reading comics, Dick was already Nightwing, and it was during the Chuck Dixon, Scott McDaniel run, and so like I fell head over heels in love with that version of the character.
Yep.
As almost everyone else in the DCU did.
He's a great character. I mean, Dick's my Robin, but Tim is my very close second Robin. Like, I loved him.
I know. I'm just giving people context for like where did I come into the story and what was the thing that imprinted on me. You know, as the little baby comic book reader hatching from the egg, what imprinted on me as the mama. And it was Dick as Nightwing during an excellent period of Nightwing's storytelling, with Tim as a very capable, competent Robin backing everyone up.
So in researching this, I went through each Robin, wrote down how many years they were each one, what the years were, and I had totally forgotten because it's been so long that the couple of years before the New 52 started, they sort of blew up the Bat family and were trying all kinds of wacky things. Like 2009, 2011, that's when Dick Grayson was Batman. That's when Tim Drake was Red Robin. That's when Stephanie was Batgirl. So like it was a whole different paradigm. And then that all got wiped out by the New 52 transition. But I'd sort of forgotten that all happened at the same time. How many years has Tim Drake been Robin?
Tim Drake, I'm guessing, started as Robin in the early 90s, so about 30 years?
33 years, minus 2 for Red Robin, so 31 years total as Robin, 33 in,
I did not do any research.
He started in 1990 as that was his first appearance as Robin.
I'm feeling good.
Jason Todd was Robin for 5 years, very short stint. He was dead for 17. And he's been Red Hood for 10 years now. I'm sorry, 18 years now. The entire length of the show. He debuted the same year as the show did.
Interesting.
Stephanie Brown, around a lot longer than you think. How many years do you think she's been
as Robin?
No, a spoiler. How many, just in general as a character, how many years do you think she's been around?
Oh, geez. She's probably introduced in the late aughts, early 2010s, so maybe 20 years?
She was introduced in 1992.
1992? Wow.
Yeah. So she... unless I have that written down wrong. No, I don't think I do. She was introduced a few years after Tim was. Yeah, she was 1992 was her first appearance as Spoiler. So how many years is that? I think I wrote that number down wrong. But only 2 years.
Her dad was a Bat villain, right?
Yeah, so about 30 years of Spoiler. 1 year as Robin, 4 years as Batgirl. So she's her
dad, the Clue Master.
Clue Master, yeah.
First appearance, you want to guess first appearance of Clue Master?
1964.
66.
Damian has been Robin for 17 years.
Gardner Fox and Carmine Infantino.
Yeah. So those are the Robins. Now, to get to his question, what to do? It's a mess. Question. Get a new Robin and stick with that one forever? No. There's already too many Robins, so you don't add a new one to the mix.
You can't really do much about it's been discussed on the show before. There's not a lot you can do when the current Robin is the biological son of Batman. That limits you in so many ways.
It does, and also just to be cold-bloodedly businesslike about it, the fact that James Gunn says he's his favorite Robin means he's going to be all over the movies, and we know that the comics tend to take a lot of their direction from the movies, so he's not going anywhere. Not that he has, it's been 17 years, he's not going anywhere, but now he's really going to be in the forefront, and he will, possibly become the iconic Robin to people now if he's going to be in the films.
Well, and I think you and Josh discussed this on a show not too long ago of like, there's also now that, Damian's been introduced, there's no other person who can take up the mantle of the Bat.
Right. It's all a mess.
There were stories, like there were pre-Damian stories where it was either Dick, but usually Dick gets disenfranchised, and there's like stories where it's Tim, there's stories where it's Terry, they're introducing like kind of the Batman Beyond universe. But once you have Damian in the mix, you can't really... It's
over. Yeah. It really is tough to say, but I mean, the Bat family books are kind of in big trouble. They're broken. They get by because they do there's so many of them, and they occasionally, like Nightwing's really good, but the paradigm is broken. Who Batman is broken. His family is broken. Robin is Tim Drake in one book and Damian in another book. Like, it's broken. And it traces back to to Damian. It traces back to them not letting him die at the end of Grant Morrison's story and rebooting it, the universe with him. They had their chance. They had their moment to unbreak it, and they didn't, and it's broken, and it's
right,
tough.
because now that Damian's firmly established as both Bruce's son and the Robin, like, you can't kill him because killing him, the trauma of losing a son would supplant, and I think we've talked about this before, it would supplant the trauma of losing the parents, which is Batman's entire driving force. So it's a lose-lose scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only real, if I'm in charge of DC, I mean, once they convince me I can't bring Dick Grayson back as Robin, which I'm in charge, so why could they stop me? How could they stop me?
Because he's Nightwing. I'm sorry, Connor.
Warner Brothers would stop me, but I think you make Damian a bad guy, an anti-hero like Talia.
Which they sort of, like, they've teased.
They got to the edge of it, but they brought it back.
Well, but they've teased it with Jason.
Yeah.
A number of times as well, because Jason is so close to the line.
I think you make him the new Ra's al Ghul, and you set up that sort of the tragedy of Bruce having lost his son to that. But then that would become Bruce's whole obsession. Like, there's just the fact that he's his biological son just ruins everything. So what do? You don't need to stop taking Robins. There's already too many. I think you do what they have been doing, which is his third option, which is rotate the existing Robins. So, like, in some books it's Tim, in some books it's Damian. It depends on, the book and the creator and the story. I mean, clearly Robin, Tim Drake getting a different identity didn't work. They tried several. He was Drake, if you recall. We've all forgotten that. We've all excised that from our brains, but he was a character called Drake.
The only reason I remember that is because it took them doing that for me to realize that Drake was a term for a type of bird.
Yeah. So they tried making Tim Red Robin. They tried making him Drake. It didn't stick. For too many fans, he is the iconic Robin. So I think they're gonna have to stick with Tim and Damian sort of sharing the role. Now, what does that mean for Duke?
That is, Duke's the elephant in the room, and like Duke, I have no problem with Duke as a character. But again, I think they almost admitted that they didn't know where Duke fit in the beginning of his introduction. And I would say that the arc or the story where I think Duke has worked the best, and I've enjoyed that character the most, has been the Sean Murphy.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That was my next thing, was the White Knight verse, I guess we'll call it. Sean Murphy's epic run on his, we talked about this issue in the last episode, his epic run of Elseworlds books, and that Duke is prominent in that. And without spoiling it, I'll just say he's prominently wearing a red outfit in the most recent. But I would also
say, like, he's been reworked in that story to be almost more, and again, like, I'm not trying to like play on black character tropes, but like, he's more of a Luke Cage. But he is a big dude. He's like Duke in the main continuity is a kid like all the other Robins, whereas Duke in the White Knight verse is like a big dude.
He's a man.
Formidable.
He's a man. He's a full-grown, formidable man.
Right, but he's willing to like he's willing to put on the Robin outfit if that's what it takes to get the job done, to save the city, to all the other stuff. And I think that to me is the most interesting version of the character I've seen portrayed outside the main continuity, where in the main continuity I haven't felt super compelled by anything they've done with that character. I think it seems like Reese agrees with that. Like, the character is wanting in terms of, let's do something cool with them. I don't know. And
I think time I saw him was they teamed him up with Black Lightning, sort of in the Outsiders, in that anthology book. But the problem is they haven't served the character. They haven't really fleshed him out. They haven't given him a reason for being. And he can be a great character. Any character can be great with the right story. It's just they haven't done it for him. And there's just so many sidekicks. And also just the, in the heyday of the 90s, when you had a Bat family bigger than this one currently. But they all got their time and due, and I don't know why it's different now, but it is, and they just don't get, like you said, they don't get a chance to really give anyone the spotlight.
Well, and what's interesting is that, like, as part of the endless series of reboots, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, in terms of Barbara was still somehow shot by the Joker,
right?
Which
doesn't make sense. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons it doesn't make sense is like this is a universe where John Henry Irons can create a suit that allows.
Well, they always said that they just you have to ignore that because
I know
they want. That was true in the old continuity too. They just
the point I'm driving at is they basically took that aspect of her character away, even though like her as Oracle was a fantastic character, and they had a great other options for Batgirl in Stephanie, in Cassandra. So they had like other Batgirls that could serve that role, but they wanted their redheaded, Batgirl who could flirt with Dick Grayson. And I don't.
But they also wanted someone who, like we talked about with Dick Grayson, the public knows. They were trying to expand this to the general public and get them interested in comics again. And the public knows Barbara Gordon as Batgirl. They don't know who Stephanie Brown is. They don't know who Cassandra Cain is.
But my point is that like if the Bat family is missing a component at the moment, I would say it's the Spider-Man, the MCU Spider-Man joke of the guy in the chair, right? They don't have a great guy in the chair right now, and I don't think you reduce Duke to that character because I think that is reductive. I think it takes away a aspect of their physicality and their ability to be out on the street, but I also think like that's something that's missing because they had Barbara in that role and she was great at it, and that's an area where they are currently depauperate.
I'm fine. Like if they want to put him in the chair, even though that's what they have Barbara doing again, basically, I'm fine with it as long as they do something with him. Because right now he doesn't do anything but stand in the background of the group shot. So if they want to say, "Hey, let's make him the computer guy in the back of the chair," that's fine. But I mean, they wouldn't. I'm just saying any role they want to give him that's actually an interesting role, then do it. Otherwise, why is he there? It's just a waste of a character. Now, Reese G, he calls himself a young African-American man, so he probably doesn't have children. But I will say that, I think this is public knowledge, Duke is Robin in the new Bat Wheels cartoon. So it's meant for kids. It's not an all-ages cartoon. So, but he is Robin in that cartoon. So
I did not know that.
I don't know if that's public knowledge or not. I might not. I probably should have said that, but I don't think my NDA is good anymore. Anyway, so here you go. We spent way too much time talking about Robin, and I could talk about Robin and how fucked up the Batman books are now for another half an hour.
I have not yet introduced my kid to any superheroes or comics or any of that. Mm-hmm. But I will say one of the words he already knows, and this is not a joke, is Grogu.
Well, that goddamn Yoda is adorable.
He's adorable. His main Christmas present last year was a stuffy of Grogu, and there's like a 3-minute animated Miyazaki short on Disney Plus of Grogu, and so his first pop culture awareness that he can say out loud into the world is Grogu. My
brother's first word was Batman.
Was that your fault? Older brother or younger brother?
Younger brother.
So it is your fault.
Yeah, so Duke is it has been announced. Duke is the Robin in the Batwheels cartoon, and Cassandra is the Batgirl. Anyway, it's tough. We always say on the show that the Signal is a waste because he's a waste in terms of they don't use him, they don't do anything with him. So either do something with him or don't. That's my feeling now. Is he's been around long enough. He's been around for 5 years at this point.
And to reiterate the point you sort of made in passing, like any character can be great. Duke can be great. I have nothing against Duke. I would love to see that character succeed, but nothing I've read so far outside of the White Knight universe that Sean Murphy is doing has shown me what that character is capable of outside of the tokenism that I think he was originally introduced with.
Yeah, so I would say Reese, even though it's not the main continuity, although I would argue that the best Batman stories are being told outside the main continuity right now, is check out the Sean Murphy White Knight series of miniseries. They all got White Knight in the title, and Duke is...
And the most recent one just ended, but they've already announced that they're doing more.
Yeah, so Duke is a main character. He's not a main character, but he's a much more prominent character in that book than he is.
And a really cool character. I really like him in those books.
So check that out. And if you have kids or nieces or nephews, watch the Batwheels cartoon because it's he's Robin in that. So there you go. Reese wrote to contact@ifanboy.com. That's how he got in the show. Thanks for writing in. You can also write in to be in our Media Explode show, our non-comics media monthly show. If you do that, put Media Explode into the subject line. Thank you. And now we're onto the plugs and announcements part of the show. And what's funny about this is every week we give you a schedule and then we change it. And that's no different this time. We've changed the schedule again just because there are so many special edition shows coming out in the next 2 months, and we just have to keep moving them around just for scheduling reasons.
Refreshing your podcast feed, you'll get what you get. It's going to be fine.
For 8 straight weeks,
calm down.
Starting with last week, for 8 straight weeks, there's going to be a show every Thursday. So last week was Media Explode. This past week was our Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania review. This coming week is our Legion of Superheroes animated review. The week after that's a Talksplode. It's in the can and recorded. I'll let Josh tell you who it is next week since it's his baby. The week after that will be our Media Explode show, in which Josh and Ron are going to review Andor Season 1. Josh has watched the entire season. They're going to talk about it.
Hey, Connor. Yep. Why not both?
Why not both what?
You say Andor, I say why not both?
Oh, yeah, true. The week after that will be Shazam 3 of the Gods, probably. The week after that will be Booksplode. We're going to talk about Kingdom Come. That's our next Booksplode show, Kingdom Come. We haven't read that. Neither one of us have read that in a long time. And with it popping up again in the Batman and Superman book, we decided to go back and revisit it. And then the week after that will be the Batman, the Doom That Came to Gotham review, the animated series, that animated film. So 8 straight weeks. We're currently in week 2. I think it's going to hold. I think this is how it's going to hold, unless something slips. But that's what I think is going to happen.
You sound like one of those submariners in the World War II movie.
Hold.
Like we're below the maximum depth, Captain, and like they're waiting to see if the bolts are going to like.
You can hear the creaking.
The creaking
of the
is
pressure
happening
on the hull because it's a very complicated and delicate situation.
But like one of the bolts is going to blow and it's going to take out Hank, and we're going to be.
Yeah, the water starts coming in. Yep. Yeah. It's because Hank was drinking. That's what happened. Science Sort of, Ryan. Tell us about your show.
I do a show called Science Sort of, where if you want to learn more about the ideal gas law, which probably controls the pressure equations of submarines, it's PV equals nRT, I believe. You can learn more about that on Science Sort of, where we talk about science, but we don't take it too seriously, kind of like iFanboy's approach to comics. It's almost as if we modeled our science show after this comic book show. Not saying we did, but Ron gets a lot of credit either way. ScienceSort.com is where you can find that, as well as any podcatcher you use should be available. If you are using a podcatcher where you're like, I'm going to search for Science Sort of, and you can't find it, let me know on the Discord or otherwise, and I'll see to remedying that and making sure it becomes available wherever you want to find your podcasts. Science Sort of.
And you can find our library of over 100. No. That's not enough. Over 1,200
no, it is.
shows.
I mean, it is correct that it is over 100.
It is over 100, but it's over 1,200 shows and counting at ifanboy.com. That's where all of our podcasts are. You can also find them basically anywhere podcasts are available. That's where they'll be. You can follow us at iFanboy Comics on Instagram to find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out. And usually the best week of panels that comes out on the weekends, which is a fun thing I do when I have time.
That is the part of doing the show that I always wish I had time to contribute to, and I never seem to get my act together enough to do it.
Well,
but
you can do it at any time. Just text me the info and I'll put it up.
Yeah, but it's going to be like 3 weeks late.
No, you can't do that. It's got to be between Thursday and Sunday.
Yeah, that's that limitation is the problem.
Individually, we are CS Kilpatrick and J.A. Flanagan on Instagram. We did not coordinate that. And Ryan Haupt on Instagram and Haupt on Twitter still. Subscribe. I'm just going to blow through this. Subscribe to our YouTube page, youtube.com/ifanboy. That's where you can find our old video shows. Ryan, did you make an appearance in the old video shows?
The only appearance I made on the video shows. Do you remember?
No, that's why I asked. Was it WonderCon?
No, I never actually made it on any of the con shows. The only appearance I made was you saying my name when you did your It's Superman review.
Oh, well, okay. All right, that makes sense. All right.
That's all I got.
Well, you can find all of those shows there at youtube.com/ifanboy. Also, this show, we put it up every week if you want to listen via YouTube. It's there. And please consider leaving a review for this show, for Science Sort of, for any podcast you listen to at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We thank you. And that show went much longer than I anticipated, but I knew that Robin question would go long. I just didn't think it'd go that long.
It's
and I
fine.
apologize. I apologize to everyone.
I apologize for nothing.
That was fun. I mean, I was ready to do another 20 minutes on Robin. Let's do it. More Robin questions.
Special edition.
Ryan and I will fix the Batman situation for you.
Robin time. Robin's Egg Blue coming your way this summer.
Real quick, if you were in charge tomorrow, you're put in charge of DC. What do you do to fix Batman? Quick, one sentence.
One sentence to fix Batman. Bruce is old. Terry's in charge.
You're not getting the job. Thanks for listening. I'm Connor.
Wait, you're not going to give your sentence?
Oh, I would do an event. I mean, it's in the larger context of I would do an event that reset the continuity again. And now everyone's groaning right now, but I would reset it in a sort of take the best of the old continuity and the best of the new continuity, fix those problems. And one of the things that would happen would be that Damian would be not in the story anymore. He'd be a distant memory. If longtime readers will remember the moment in Hyper Time, where it was a Mark Waid story actually, where Batman briefly remembered the Golden Age Batwoman, and it was very heartfelt and surprising. And that's what I would have Damian be, sort of a memory that Batman can't quite grasp, but is not a character that has been around. And it would go back to being Tim. I'd want it to be Dick, but they wouldn't let me. It'd be Tim, and I would try to recreate the '90s Batman family again.
Alfred doesn't just have one hand; he's got four hands.
Alfred's got four arms. Alfred had 4 arms and an indestructible neck.
Two arms are always making cucumber sandwiches. The other 2 arms are always inflating the tires in the Batmobile. And exactly. The consciousness of the Batmobile is Damian. It's a Kit Knight Rider. Yep, he's a Kit Knight Rider situation. So Bruce Wayne gets all of the father-son interaction needs while driving the Batmobile.
One of Alfred's arms always has a tray of tea on it.
But the other 2 have to make cucumber sandwiches.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I always like to say if I was in charge of DC, I would drive DC into the ground. But that's what I would do, and it would be a glorious trip. Anyway, see you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Same bat time, same bat station.
All right.
That's a thing, right?